another show with Bobbi Ann Brady, MPP for Hallam and Norfolk. This is our November show. October was crazy busy for you. I want to get started right away because my first little question is, so is Doug Ford going to have to testify? Yes or no? What's your opinion?
No, it doesn't seem he's going to, Dave. He's using, a parliamentary privilege type thing to keep him from testifying, and I think it's sad. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, why not go? Why not show up? And I think he used the word federal in his response to the NDP questions in the House the other day. I think he used the word federal 6 times. Well, that's fantastic. It's federal. However, on the day that you decided to help Justin Trudeau out, in his crisis, you didn't tell Justin Trudeau that day that it was a federal issue. You actually said, oh, no, I'm going to help you. And we're going to, apply police services in helping you clear people from Ottawa and the borders. So, I think the NDP could have done a better job in their line of questioning. I would have had those quotes ready from Doug Ford from the day that he decided to help Justin Trudeau. And I would have said, well, wait a minute, Premier. On this day, you actually spoke up, and it must have been a provincial issue that day. You must have thought there was a provincial aspect that day. And now you're saying that it's all federal. You can't have it both ways, right?
And it's the Emergencies Act, folks, in case you don't know what we're talking about. I guess I should have gave a better segue into that. But I mean, so let's get to the bottom. Let's find out what happened there, right? Everybody should be testifying. And
right.
It's owed to the public.
It is owed to the public. And, can the Premier go and do a decent job testifying? I don't doubt it. But the fact that he's choosing not to is a bit concerning. And it just makes you go, well, hey, what does he have to hide?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you shared your opinion on that. I want to jump right from one extreme to the next. Local politics. The elections were last week. 2 new mayors. Great to see. Lots of new councillors. Just for my own view, I saw now that 2 mayors, MPP, MP, all women. I think that's probably the first for Norfolk, isn't it?
It is. I believe it is the first. And I'll go as far, I'll even take that a step further, that next door in Tillsonburg, Deb Gilvazy was elected as the mayor of Tillsonburg as well. And I've worked with Deb for years. Fantastic woman. So, we can even extend that even a little further, that this area is being represented by women largely. And, I'm the first person who will say I'm no radical feminist. I think that, the best person for the job should always have the job. In this case, it seems that the electorate, right from Tillsonburg to the far reaches of Hallam County decided that women were the right choice in these cases. And, I'm okay with that. I look forward to working with all of these women. But like I say, I'm always the person who will say it's the best person for the job who should get it. So
I agree totally.
Kudos to all the women.
And they got lots of work to do. All you guys do. So,
let's roll up our sleeves, get it done.
I was just going to say that. Let's roll up our sleeves.
Yeah.
I got to talk to you about, too, because I read your article on that you had put out, your column, sorry. It is time to focus on priority services. I want to take a few moments, if you don't mind, and maybe just talk about that piece that you wrote and where it came from and what it means to you, because you're pretty passionate and you gave out some really big numbers on what we're spending on healthcare. It's time to talk about it, isn't it? It's really time to break this down provincially and get some kind of a mandate or a vision, because we need it.
I sat in the House this week as, the House is back and I heard one of the PC members, I won't name her, but she's sitting there and she's yelling across the way that, those of us on the other side of the House have to get on board with their healthcare plan. And I'm like, well, what is the healthcare plan? I don't really know what the healthcare plan is, other than we continue to throw more money at a broken system. And, the healthcare budget rises every single year, and yet we see a regression. We're now seeing a regression in our system. I don't blame this current government entirely, Dave. This has been a slippery slope for years, and we see it in other key sectors like education. Healthcare and education come to the top of the mind, where we see systemic issues that continually get worse. And so, why continue to throw money at something when you're not addressing where the problems really lie? I mean, I asked the question in my column, how many administrators lost their jobs, right? We know a lot of frontline workers lost their jobs throughout the pandemic. How many administrators lost their jobs? There's more money being thrown into administration and what I would call paper pushing than we are putting into the front lines. And frontline workers are coming to meet with me in droves about this situation. Listen, the money's not coming to those of us on the front lines, and that's why we're losing them. Mike Harris, love him or hate him, used to have a saying that you can't be all things to all people all of the time. And we're at that. When times are good, you can spend the money, you can invest, or you can contribute to things that may be considered serendipity or frivolous, or however you want to describe them. But we're at a crossroads in this province where we have to decide what our priorities are, and we need to focus on those priorities. And I'm very, very worried that the priority that this government has right now is housing. And to me, it's a shock because all of a sudden housing is being discussed. And is it a deflection away from what we're seeing in the healthcare industry? Why are we all of a sudden talking about housing? And they say, well, it's because the Liberals didn't look after housing. Well, did the Liberals not talk about housing because they didn't think it was an issue? I'm really worried that, we're putting all our eggs in one basket, and the healthcare industry is not going to fix itself. So it is. It's time for all of us to decide, not only the government, but it's time for us as taxpayers to, take stock of what we really think the priorities are. And the numbers in the column, Ontario's 2022 budget is going to be $198.6 billion. Of that total, $75.2 billion is earmarked for healthcare. That's 38% of the budget. Ontario's debt is currently $466 billion. Your share and my share personally is somewhere around $32,000. That's scary.
Yeah.
Can government continue to spend money? Yes, it can. But are you and I willing to pay for it?
When you look at $75.2 billion, why do I feel like I'm not getting my money's worth? That's a bad thing to say. I shouldn't, and I shouldn't say that, but healthcare is so critical. We've got an aging population. That's going to be $100 billion in 5 years. It's not even a question.
Absolutely.
So how come we're not looking at a newer model? Like you said, what is their healthcare policy? Can they explain it to us in relative terms that we can understand, so that we see going forward there's some kind of safety net or essential services, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be there for us? Because right now, I don't think there is.
Yeah, no, and it's time to be more efficient. I don't think that we are efficient. Healthcare workers tell me we're not efficient, that the government's not being efficient, the government's not encouraging efficiencies, and I get it. I get that when you, in the private sector, if you do more with less, it's called an efficiency. In the public sector, it's called a cut. And we all know the people who will yell and scream that efficiencies are cuts in the public sector. But it's time to trim the fat. We can no longer afford the fat cats at the top. We've got to trim that. And I mean, Tim Hudak campaigned a few elections ago on that idea. It was all how it was messaged, but he wasn't wrong. There's a lot of money going to places where it's making very little impact for you and I as a taxpayer. And you're right, we're not getting our money's worth.
You asked the question in your column, is it time to invest in vital services? What do you consider vital services? Well,
healthcare and education are vital services. Our supports for our seniors is the one that I will continue to talk about because, in recent weeks, locally, we've had a retirement home close in Delhi. I went to many doors during the campaign where I saw that our supports for seniors are not working. There are seniors who are aging at home, and the government continues to push this whole aging at home business. And it's a beautiful thought, Dave. Of course, we all want to age at home where we like our own bed and we like our own surroundings, and it may be on a property that we have known since the beginning of time. But there are people out there who are aging at home who I feel shouldn't be, because the system is failing them. And, I've heard from people who on Facebook who say, well, my mom continued to live in her home until she passed away at 98 and she lived a beautiful life. Okay, well, were you there to assist her every day? Yes, I was. Okay, well, that's completely different. If you're a senior who has loved ones who are going to come and assist you every single day and who are going to advocate for you, then that works. But let's be honest, that's not the case for all of these seniors. And I came across a senior in Dunnville during the campaign, and she goes through my mind, many times a week, actually, as I do meetings and I talk about these issues. And it broke my heart. I mean, she shouldn't be aging at home. This woman, she obviously, to me, had dementia type issues, and she admitted to me that she does not have family in the area. She admitted to me that she spends a lot of money on people who come into her home to do things for her. And the opportunity for someone like her to be taken advantage of is just so large. She was lonely, right? She wanted me to come in and have tea. And, when you're door knocking, you typically spend 45 seconds at a door, and that's considered a lot. And here I spent, 10, 15 minutes with this woman because my heart just broke for her. She was lonely. Would she be better served in a retirement home where she could go in and play cards or go and bake and cook with people in the same facility? I honestly believe so.
And it's hard when that comes upon the age of folks that are aging like that and maybe have some mental health issues like that. They can't make those decisions. They actually don't know what's best for them sometimes. No. They feel maybe by staying at their home, they're hiding it a little bit. They're protecting themselves a little bit. And good kudos for you for, taking the time to talk to them, to talk to this person.
From when I speak to them, I get this sense, Dave, that they feel like if they speak out, if they tell the truth of what they want, they're disappointing someone. And that just breaks my heart that they can't be honest. These folks have worked hard their whole life. They've given back to their community, and now they're in their golden years, and they feel like if they actually tell the truth, that they'll be disappointing one of their loved ones. And
there's an aspect to it too, where when I think back to our neighbors when I was a child, they were older folks, but everybody kept an eye on them. It was a different, that doesn't happen anymore. I get that. I'm not trying to go back and, but that's a sense of community. And that's one thing we got to reestablish, especially when you have areas in a town like Delhi or Port Dover. We've got to start working a little bit more together so that, when you see these problems, they can be addressed. And you're like, and it's the other side of it. If you're the neighbor, you don't want to say anything, do you?
Right.
You don't want to be the guy that said, got her.
And a lot of times the systems are set up so that if you are the neighbor or you are somebody who actually has reached out and care about these people, the systems are set up so that you can't speak to them. I know people who see things with seniors who call the operators of the PSW programs and everything else. They'll call and they'll say, I noticed this while I was in their house. And they say, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. You're not a relative, right? So the system just shuts you right down because they really don't want to know the truth about what's going on, or they want to deny it. And there's, Dave, there's so many of these things that keep me up at night. And I guess if you don't care, if you don't take pride in your community, then it doesn't bother you. But it really does bother me. And this whole going back to what you were saying about, noticing the neighbor, everybody is so busy these days. Yeah. And, they're running kids here, there, and everywhere. They're busting their hump to pay the bills. And I feel like that sense of community, a bit of it is lost, but we are lucky. We are blessed that we still live in an area where we do largely know our neighbors and we can keep an eye on them. But like I say, the system is set up so that you and I really can't advocate for that person next door because they don't want to hear from us, right?
Well,
they want to hear from next of kin or whatever.
Yeah, and and like we talked about earlier, you don't want to get yourself involved. Like a lot of people don't want to get involved, right? They don't. That's somebody else's problem. But I think that's part of the problem is, you can handle these situations delicately and still talk to someone and get help for these people. And I think that's the critical component. And usually, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, but usually when someone gets sick, let's say there's two folks in a home, they're seniors, usually the caregiver ends up being the one that's in the hospital, like when it's a dementia story or when it's something like that. And that just proves to your point, you got to look at these situations, be analytical about it a little bit and see what's best for everybody. And I think that's a critical point. Now, how are you going to get Doug Ford to do that?
Well, I'm going to continue to stand up. I'm going to talk about healthcare. I'm going to talk about senior care. I continue to write letters, and I hope other people are joining me. I hope other people in the House are pushing for the same things I am, and I hope that MPPs on the PC side of the House are, behind closed doors, also advocating for these things because our systems are broken. And you're bang on when you say that it's oftentimes the caregiver who burns out. Another door that I knocked on in Port Rowan, I come around the corner and there's younger people vacuuming a car out, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. I'm in the Villages here, and young people, and no, they were there to, kind of clean things up for their parents. Turn the corner and there's the parents. Dad had just been released from hospital with back surgery. He did not look good. His coloring was not good. And then his wife was sitting next to him, and she says the PSWs continue to cancel. I can't move him. I have health issues myself. And was I worried about him or was I worried about her? I was actually more worried about her. She's the one who broke down and said, I can't look after him myself. And, it's the system is really, really failing the people who need it the most. And, they've paid into the system, they've paid their taxes, they've worked their butt off their whole life, and now the system is failing them. So, and I know it's not this government's fault alone. This is a long time in the making. The pandemic has exacerbated these things and shone a light on the inefficiencies, on the deficiencies. But that being said, it is up to the government of the day to roll up their sleeves and start making some really difficult decisions and getting the job done.
That's one thing I noticed all across the board when you brought it up about the pandemic. It showed the weak links we have in all our systems. It made them, it just made it so clear that we got a lot of work to do, didn't it? I think we were riding a wave thinking we were invincible. And it just, like you said, education, look at that. Mental health, look at that. And we didn't even talk about, I don't even know if this $75.2 billion takes into account mental health. I don't know. I'm assuming it does, right?
Yeah, pockets of it would. Yeah, absolutely.
But you and I both see that's going all ages. The kids with anxiety now, like from 2 years of a pandemic, the seniors with anxiety. Boy, we need to invest in a system that, I don't know. I think we're both getting frustrated in this conversation, but it's such a good thing to have and to let people know how we feel, and they can share their feelings too with you. And I hear from people, so it's important that we understand. But you're totally nailing it. Let's end on a good note. I know you've been busy. I see you dropping pucks, and I see you out at the fair. Yeah, come on. What have you been celebrating in our communities? What have you been having fun at? I know you've always been a person that enjoyed the fair. You're one of those fair kids, aren't you? You're probably in the grandstand. You're probably in Delhi's grandstand.
I was at the grandstand this year. I went there on the Tuesday morning and dressed for. I actually got to open the fair on the Tuesday afternoon, and my goodness, you can probably tell from my face, It was the highlight, I think, of my 4 months as MPP, as a Norfolk County girl, as a girl who cheerleaded at the fair for a few years, and who did tug of war and was decked out in blue and gold and continues to bleed blue and gold. Oh my gosh, Young Canada Day holds such a special spot in my heart. So I was at the grandstand, and on the left of me To the left of me was Jay Everly with the OPP, who's I think kids go to Holy Trinity. And to my right was Kim Huffman, Councillor Kim, who was cheering for Waterford. And I'm in the middle cheering for Delhi. And we were, I'm shocked I actually had a voice left by the time I had to deliver my speech in the afternoon. There's just no better feeling, and you can't articulate that to anyone who never lived it.
You're right. You're totally.
It seems so silly. It seems so silly how much we love that day, but we do.
And PDCS is gone, Dover, my school. Yeah. But even going a couple of years ago, I went for some photos. The hair stood on my arms. Like, it's still that magical moment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's still, and you get so into it, and it's so much fun. And yeah, it's part of our childhood that. Anybody that comes from outside our community they're like, what is this? Like, it's our Friday night football once a year, right?
That's right. Absolutely. It's like that Friday night football game, that we see in movies.
Yeah.
That's what it is for us. My daughter's in fourth year university, and she was following along online to see who was winning everything, right? And she's like not paying attention to what's going on in class. She's looking at what's going on at Young Canada Day. But let's get to the fact that I got to open the fair. I got to cut the ribbon. The ribbon is hanging on my wall here. I'll tell you the greatest thing about that is I was introduced and they paid me the greatest compliment. And it was that Bobbi Ann is our new MPP, and she is one of us. She's just like us. And I'm going to get a bit choked up about that, but that means a lot because I am. Yeah. I'm a Norfolk County girl, and I'm here to fight for all of you in both Haldimand and Norfolk. So that was the greatest compliment anyone could give me in an introduction. It was a fabulous introduction, and I think I nailed my speech. I had reached out to Mike Ballert, who has been a friend of mine for years. Mike and I sat on Southern Counties Girls Ice Hockey Association years ago, and he's always been a friend of mine, and I know how much he's involved with the fair. And so I said, Mike, it's been a few years since I've been to an opening ceremony, and quite honestly, I can't remember what I'm supposed to talk about. And he said, just keep it lighthearted. And that's what I did. And I talked about, how blessed we are to have these agricultural roots that we can put on display, that we should continue to display forever and ever. And people come from outside of the area to see that. And, I was blessed to work in the tobacco fields of Norfolk County. And, I made light of the fact that when I went away to school, I had, tar under my fingernails. And I remember kids, from the city looking at me like, why is this girl dirty? And, I had to explain to them what working in a strip room was. And, that was a bit awkward.
I was going to say.
So that was part of my speech. But, oh, man, it was just the best feeling to get up there and deliver that speech at the Norfolk County Fair.
It's the moment when you are Norfolk, right? Yeah. It's that moment, and you just Absolutely. Suck it all in. And I mean, you might have been a little emotional. You had 4 corn dogs? How many?
I had 0.
Oh,
I had 0 corn dogs.
Good for you.
I didn't eat much fair food, to be honest. You know why? Because I was at my booth almost.
Yeah, you were busy.
7. And I just want to thank all the people who came to my booth. And there were times where, I don't know if you saw it, but I had a bar situation set up. I had the whiskey barrels with a long, plank of wood, and all we needed was the whiskey glasses lined up there. But I'd be sitting there on my bar stool, and I'd look down, and there'd be a lineup of 10 people, and everybody was just so excited. Everybody was happy to be back celebrating Norfolk County Fair in a normal way. And many of them lined up to congratulate me and to thank me for what I did. And I find that odd that when the people thank me, they thank me for challenging, what Doug Ford was trying to do here. And, there's no thanks necessary, but people are so kind and so generous. And that's, it was just, that's what I took away from all those hours at Norfolk County Fair, is just how beautiful our people are and how kind they are. And so I didn't eat much fair food because I didn't leave my booth very often.
But it goes back to that point, and I got to let you go, I know, but when you said about that compliment that was given to you, and being Norfolk, being that person, it's, I think too, because you're an independent, I almost feel like people think they're closer to you. You're not a party. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that resonates with everybody because, when you and I have our conversations, I'm not worried about crossing party lines and saying something to you. I can pretty much throw any question I want at you. You never say, oh, only this. And I think that's the difference. I think, Bobbi, you've made that very clear. You're willing to talk about these issues. And before, someone might curt those issues a bit. You know what I mean? And you're saying, no, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I can be, I don't have to, by not being bound to party lines and party messaging, I can represent Haldeman Norfolk in such a genuine fashion. I can be very, very honest and open with everyone. And I'm not saying that, politicians with parties are dishonest. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I can be more free with what I can tell you guys. And that feels really good. I want to reiterate, and I think I do this in every podcast, is there's still those people out there, I guess, who are the haters of the independent candidate. And that's fine because they're few and far between. And, but they continue to say, oh, she has no voice. Well, I will continue to say I am speaking more in the House than maybe previous members because the parliamentary rule for statements and questions, nobody can speak any sooner than 8 sessional days in between. So if I do a statement, on a Tuesday, I now have to wait 8 sessional days before I can speak again. That's for every single member. That's just not for Bobbi Ann Brady as the independent. That's for every single member. But guess what? I don't have a party that I have to share those weights with. So I'm speaking more. So to the haters, you're wrong. I do have a voice and people are listening. People are taking note at Queen's Park. People are taking note elsewhere. I just did a podcast last week with the Canadian National Firearms Association on, helping to protect our heritage here and in Canada with respect to guns. And there'll be more of that coming in the next while. I'm not going to give away what I'm up to, but there is more coming on that. For me to be approached by, the Canadian National Firearms Association was really, really exciting, actually. But they're watching what I'm doing. So to those people who think that, they're independent is not up to much, keep watching. Keep watching. All right. Any last thoughts before I let you go today? No, this is always great, Dave. This is always great. I love this time. You did drop the puck. I saw that you were doing a puck dropping somewhere too. Gosh. So. That's another thing. I've always wanted to do a puck drop. That's why I brought it up. I thought that. Right? As a hockey girl, man, I've always wanted to drop a puck. Oh, and I will say, last week in Haldeman County, I finally met Becky Keller. Oh, and, wow. I have never met Becky Keller. And I always wondered if I played against Becky Keller, right, growing up. Because we are the same age. I won't say how old we are. I was going to say that's. But we are the same age. We're getting up there. Yeah. But she's an incredible speaker. I teared up a number of times while she was delivering her speech at the Haldeman County Small Business Breakfast, and fabulous speaker. And I did get a chance to talk to her afterwards. And I said, I want to know if I ever played against you. And we didn't because she played girls hockey. I think it was Glanbrook. She played girls hockey in Glanbrook growing up. And I, of course, played boys hockey in Delhi until I was 18. So, it was just fabulous to hear how she got there. I really wish I would have made different decisions when I was younger and maybe I could have been playing with Becky Keller. But I didn't, but I'm so super proud of her, and she's got such a fabulous story for athletes, and even if you're not an athlete. So the puck drop, meeting Becky Keller, my gosh, my life is getting very, very full, Dave. And for those that don't know Becky played for Team Canada Olympics, gold medals, and a defenseman, and just so proud. Haldeman Norfolk kid just did so well. I mean, it's great to see. And you're right. You don't want to bring up, because I almost was thinking of the year. I'm like, oh, that was sorry. Well, if they Google her and actually look back at which Olympics she played in, you can figure out how old we are. but that story of, is it the 2010? I'm going to say a 2010 Olympics, I think. Vancouver, am I right?
Yes.
2010 was Vancouver. And how that Team Canada, that female Team Canada, I remember that very well. They were a disaster heading into the Olympics, an absolute disaster. And how they rectified that is absolutely fascinating. And
just the Canadian in them.
Yeah. And, they dug deep, and her story on how they actually rectified their disaster situation is just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's we're going to end on a hockey note. Imagine that.
Love it. All right. Canadian?
Take care, and we'll see you. We'll see you next month. Thanks for doing this. I know lots of good questions. Folks can email you at your office if they have questions about any of the stuff we talked about. And I know that you and your staff, Sam, will get right on it and help them out. So take care. We'll talk next month. Okay.
You bet. Thanks, Dave.